Namaste everyone. Uh, we welcome you all for the second lecture in the Mudrarakshasa lecture series. Uh, Thank you. Kindly, I request Professor K.S. Kannan to kindly take over the lecture. Thank you.
नमस्सर्वेभ्यः ओम नमः शुक्रबृहस्पतिभ्याम् IIT मद्रास् इत्यस्याः संस्थायाः संस्कृतसमितेः एवञ्च सन्त राजेन्द्र सिंह जी महाराज चेर् इति अनयोः आश्रये प्रवर्तमानम् इदं प्रवचनं मुद्राराक्षसम् अधिकृत्य। Last time we spoke about the introductory aspects of the play Mudrarakshasa, and we also spoke a few words about Viśākhadatta, the author. And for the sake of the continuity of the story, I would like to go through some portion of the opening act, though I had covered it in the previous talk. The, the play begins with a prologue, as Sanskrit plays usually begin with, and there is a conversation between Sutradhara and Minati. And in the very Nandi shloka, there is a beautiful dialogue as between Shiva and Parvati. And even there, the cunningness, which is the focus of the play, so he is very well portrayed. Um, After covering the plot of the play, I'll come back to a few interesting verses of the play when I'll take this verse up and show how the opening verse itself is an indication of the nature of the contents of this play. So, the witty conversation between Shiva and Parvati is beautifully delineated there, showing how it is the cunningness which forms the central constituent of this play. Uh, we often see um, portrayals of raga and dvesha. That's a regular part of life in drama too. But taken to very base levels, they show themselves as issues pertaining to sex and violence, as we see in the modern visual media, such as the cinema or the small screen, and so on. In this play, however, there is nothing about women in a way. On the other hand, in fact, there is no woman character at all, except for one. So there is no woman character at all, no female characters in this play. So feminists can raise a big hue and cry about this play, but in this play there is nothing about that. And number two, there are no violent scenes in the play. Of course, Bharata's Natya Shastra itself says scenes of violence should not be depicted on the stage, and therefore such things are generally not shown on the stage. And if they have to be conveyed to the audience, it is conveyed through some conversation. As for example, in the play Viśākhadatta, the warfare between Rama and Ravana is shown in the form of a dialogue between two persons who give a who are, as it were, giving eyewitness accounts, a running commentary on what's happening in the battlefield, and it is through that it is conveyed. And therefore, audio is very low in the message. And therefore, we find no scenes of actual violence on the stage in Sanskrit dramas, and certainly there is nothing like that here. And further, what is more important than actual physical violence or conflict in the form of physical violence is the intellectual conflict, and that forms the essential constituent of this play. And the intellectual clash between Chanakya on the one hand and the Amatya Rakshasa on the other is very well depicted in this play. and that forms the central theme of this play. So, while on the one hand you can say that it is the cunningness of Chanakya and Amatya Rakshasa, each trying to outwit the other politically, forms the theme of the play, one can also see how in this play we can see that it is also a sort of a combination of the qualities of the head and the heart. Now, in the case of Chanakya, it is the qualities of his brilliance, so which shows itself, and in the case of Amatya, it is the quality of the heart that shows itself. Chanakya is not without a heart, and Amatya Rakshasa is not without his share of brilliance. So, on the other hand, the brilliance of Chanakya is matched by the devotion of Amatya Rakshasa, and the two very well balanced out. As I said, the qualities of the head and the heart are beautifully balanced in this play. So, the opening act has a prologue in which there is a conversation between the Sutradhara and the Nati. And unlike the play of Kalidasa, we find in this play that the author um, is quite confident of what he's going to present to the audience. So, in Kalidasa's prologue, we see, for example, in his Malavikagnyamitra, so Kalidasa is still hesitant. Um, he feels that he may not get a good reception from the audience, and that is because there were giants prior to him. So Bhasa, Saumila, Kaviputra, and others. Bhasa, Saumila, Kaviputra, Dina, Prasita Yashasam, नाटकान् अतिक्रम्य वर्तमानकवेः कालिदासस्य कथं कृतौ परिषदौ बहुमानः. So he had a lot of hesitation to regarding this, whether his play would be very well received or not. And when he wrote his Shakuntalam, Kalidas was already a poet and a dramatist of great fame, and was very well established as a dramatist par excellence. And he only said, Bhirupa Bhuvishtha Parishadiyam. And here is the audience, which consists of some of the best of uh, people who can be receptive to a play. So, Abhirupa means persons of noble origin and persons of the elite of the society, and persons who are high connoisseurs of great ideas and so on. And they constituted the majority. Abhirupa Bhuishtha Parishadiyam. So, and that also made Kalidasa say a few words with humility, saying, Aparitosha Dvisham Nasadhamanye Prayoga Vijnanam. So it's only when scholars give the approbation that I can be confident and have the satisfaction of having done a good job. But on the other hand, um, this is not the case in this play, where we see the Sutradhara saying that Kavya Vishesha Vedinyam Parishadi. Now, here is this audience which is very well aware of the Kavya Vishesha, means excellent poetry. So, they are sensitive to excellent literary compositions, and such being the case, so I have immense joy in presenting this play, he says. Mamapi Samahan Paritoshaha. So, great joy I have in presenting this play. And he also says with confidence, so now that there is a good kshetra, even an idiot can have a good audience here. So he gives the comparison of agriculture, where if the kshetra is very good, sat kshetra patita krishihi, so then um, immaterial of the qualities of the person who sows seeds, the crop will have a good yield. And um, therefore, I have nothing to worry about this audience at all. And surely uh, the play will get a good reception. So he thus beams with confidence in a way. So even though he himself is not boasting of his own play or whatever, so still he knows that he has a very receptive audience. we do not know whether Viśākhadatta had attained already a great fame while he wrote this play, but we clearly see that there is a strain of confidence in what he is presenting. And um, he transports us to the time and place of Chanakya himself, the actual um, context of the play. So he asks his wife, uh, how come there is some celebration at home and a lot of preparations are going on, and there is some Vaka Vishesha also, some special preparations of eatables and so on. Is all happening, and how come he doesn't know? So, what's the situation? And he uses certain expressions regarding his wife, which once again are indicative of the, the theme of the play, the content of the play. So he addresses his wife in a beautiful manner. So he calls her not only Gunavati, he calls her Upaya Nile. So it is a wife who runs the family. So Grihini Grihamuchyate, as we see, and it is she who accomplishes um, the the three purusharthas, sadhike vivargasya madbhavana niti vidye. So you are the niti vidya of my family and then of my home, and karyacharye. So you are the very teacher, preceptor for my actions. So, and he calls her. Now, the Niti Vidya itself, obviously referring to Rajaniti Vidya. In Sanskrit, the two are often used interchangeably and sometimes synonymously. So, Niti Vidya itself, as though by default value, stands for Rajaniti Vidya, and therefore um, the housewife is the embodiment of the Niti Vidya, and the sole purpose of Niti Vidya is the attainment of the three Vargas. So we have the classification of the Purusharthas into three or into four. So into three we have Dharma, Artha, and Kama, and into four by the addition of Moksha. Now there is no real conflict between the two, and it is not proper to argue that moksha was added later, so that there were only three vargas. But on the other hand, dharma itself subsumed moksha under itself. So, yato abhyudaya nishreyasa siddhihi sa moksha. So, abhyudaya refers to the worldly achievements, and nishreyasa refers to what is implied by the word moksha, and therefore we find that the Rajaniti is something that is directed towards the attainment of the three valid goals of life, so namely Trivarga, also called Purushartha. So, or even as the Bhadras of life, we have the designations of Chaturbhadra and the Purushartha Chatushtaya and so on. So that is what is referred to here. So he calls her and he asks her what's the reason for this celebratory mood at home and for special cooking, etc. So, and then she says, well, I have invited Brahmanas. So Brahmanas were always respected, but for the intervention of the West in the past 200 years, so where they have sown seeds of dissension in our society, so Brahmanas were always a respected lot, and their contribution to society was immense, and um, therefore Brahmanas have been invited, and the context is of Chandroparaga, or the lunar eclipse, as she says, and Sutradhara says, well, I have absolutely no problem regarding inviting Brahmanas home. That's a very nice thing. But I think you have been misled by somebody regarding Chandropagraha or the lunar eclipse. So, because I have proficiency in Jyotish Shastra, so with all its 64 limbs, you see, so he's a past master of Jyotisha, and therefore, I think you have been misled by somebody. So he says, uh, uh, apparently there is this ketu eclipsing the moon. Kruragrahasa ketuhu chandramasam. So abhibhavatum ichhati. But then um, Buddha Yoga is there, so Mercury comes, and therefore this eclipse is prevented, is what he's trying to say. but even before he refers to Buddha, um, there is heard from behind the screen the words of Chanakya. Ka esha majisthite chandram abhibhavitam. So who is there? So who dares to overcome Chandra when I am here? So there is a evident play on the words, as in the first sloka also, in the second sloka also there is a evident play on the word. Here also there is a beautiful play on the word here. So the word ketu and Chandra refer to the two characters in the play. Chandra refers to Chandragupta Maurya, and Ketu refers to Malaya Ketu, who is the son of Raja Parvataka. And um, therefore, it is as though Ketu is trying to eclipse Chandra. So Malay Ketu becoming more important than Chandragupta and overpowering him. So there is this plot that is referred to. In fact, in the opening words of Chanakya, there is a reference to this, that there is a widespread rumor that Chandragupta is sought to be unseated from power, and therefore it is that Chanakya is very angry, and therefore the words that were heard from behind the screen were those of Chanakya, and Chanakya says, "So who dares to um, overpower Chandragupta Chandra when I am here? As long as I am here." So in the statement that we hear from behind the screen, there is a reference only to Chandra, and the same statement when it is repeated, so there is the word Chandragupta. So it's made clear that the reference is to Chandragupta himself, even though it began with reference to Chandra. So there are undertones and overtones of references to the political context, and therefore Chanakya is sensitive to anybody speaking ill of Chandragupta, and therefore he wants to ensure that Chandragupta is quite safe, and therefore um, he says the repeats the same words when Sutradhara himself repeats the words. So he refers to the ketu grasa of Chandra, and when those words are repeated, Chanakya makes it very clear, and he says, "Aha, kayesha mayisthite Chandraguptam abhibhavitum ichhati." So who can overpower Chandragupta when I am here? And um, the Sutradhara recognizes that it is the word of Kautilya. So Kautilya, so it is Kautilya who is speaking, and as soon as the name Kautilya is heard, the Nati shows fear. She gesticulates fear. Nati bhayam natayati, as the sage directions shows, and um, Sutradhara continues with his words saying, Kautilya Kutilamatis Eshaha. So this is Kautilya, a master of cunning, and then Yena Krodhagnau Prasabham Adahi Nanda Vamshaha. The entire Nanda race was burnt by the fire of his anger. And um, hearing that there is the eclipse of the moon, he is naturally concerned about the Mauryendu. So the Maurya Chandra, that is Chandragupta Maurya. So he is apprehensive of any possible attack on Chandragupta, and that's why he is speaking like this. Okay, let's clear the stage for him. So let's go away. Avam Chavaha. So there ends the Prastavana. And the opening words of Chanakya, who makes an appearance on the stage right now. So he enters Muktam Shikham Paramrishan Kupitaha Chanakya. So we see an angry Chanakya here, and he is passing his hand over his loosened tuft of hair. So Muktam Shikham Paramrishan. And then he once again says, who is there that dares to um, attack Chandragupta or excel him or overpower him? That will be equivalent to pulling out the tooth of an angry lion, so which has only recently killed an elephant, and its teeth are red with the blood of the elephant. And who dares to um, pull out the Dhamshtra or the tooth of the lion, so overpowering the lion. Paribhuya. Samskrutam kohartamichhati. Now you can contrast, for example, the situation in Kalidasa's play where Sarvadamana, the boy, is playing with the lion's cub and he asks the lion to open the mouth. So, Jrimbhasva Simha, Dantamste Ganeshe, and so on. So, here is a situation where he says the lion has already opened its mouth, Jrimbha Vidarita Mukha. So, its mouth is fully open. And um, uh, the tooth of the lion is looking bright on account of the the blood of the elephant that has recently destroyed, and who dare to lay his hands upon the tooth of the lion. So obviously showing how angry he is with anyone who may dare to think of even abhibhavitum ichhati, so overpowering Chandragupta. And he also asks the question, who is it that doesn't um, uh, like my shikha being bound again? So the binding of the shikha or the tuft of hair. So he is after some pratigna. So when Chanakya makes a pratigna, a vow, a sankalpa for achieving something, he loosens his tuft, and it is only upon the completion of the task that he binds it again. And he refers to his own shikha in a beautiful manner. So, in the past 1 or 2 centuries, the shikha of a brahmana had become a butt of ridicule. But look at the epithets that he uses for describing his own shikha. It is Nanda Kula Kala Bhujagi. So it's like a female serpent, the dark cobra, against the family of the Nandas. Nanda Kula Kala Bhujagi and Kopanala Bahulola Dhumalatam. And it's once again a manifestation of his fiery anger. So, from which the smoke has issued, and the wavy smoke issuing from the fire of his anger. So that constitutes his shikha, dhumalatam. Adyapi badhyamana, I am about to bind it once again, and somebody is still perhaps doesn't want my tuft being tied up again. So who is it that?
Sorry, actually, the internet issue was there. We are back again. Thank you for the patience. So we can start. Yes. Even the opening words of Chanakyas, they show the disaster that can result in the wrong rumors. So, Katham Prakashatangato Ayamarthaha. He starts with the worry about rumor. So, these are the days of disinformation and misinformation, and we see how misinformation can sometimes cause havoc, can cause outrage, and so on. So, only yesterday we have seen how, for example, in Maharashtra, there has been a great problem. So, on account of some rumors. So, Now, Chanakya himself is very much worried about a false rumor being spread, namely that Rakshasa is very angry because the Nandas have all been destroyed. And then he has made a promise to Malay Ketu that he will be given the kingdom, and therefore um, uh, the Mlecha kings have all um, lent support to this program of dislodging Chandragupta. So that is um, the plan that is going on, and people have come to feel that. So we see, for example, in the Ramayana, the problem of the rumor creating a great havoc in the personal life of Ramachandra. And even here, so even in the life of Krishna, for example, there was the accusation that he had stolen Shamantakamani, and therefore um, he he made all his efforts so to see that those rumors are scotched and the truth is made public. And in the case of Ramayana, we find that the rumors had already spread so far and wide, and even as to reach the commonest of the people. And therefore, Rama knew that it was too late a stage and there was nothing that could be done. The nature, the very problem was something that it could not be handled easily, and therefore he decided regarding Sita Parityaga. So, whatever the situation, Chanakya here is very angry that people have a false notion because the spread of the fake news of the Mlecha kings coming together with joining hands with Malay Ketu and ultimately attempting to dethrone Chandragupta. And therefore, um, how is this to be handled? And he says, well, I have destroyed the entire Nanda family, and if the fire of my anger has subsided, it's only because there was nothing more to destroy. So dahya bhavat na khedat, and it's not on account of exhaustion that the fire of my anger has come to a come to an end or whatever. So it's only because I have destroyed everyone who came against this project of mine. So in about 4 verses, there is a description of the fire of anger, the metaphor of equating anger and with fire. So is there in several verses. So I have given an idea of one or two of them. And he says, well, I have accomplished all that I had to accomplish, but I still continue to work. So his mind was always towards tapas. And he says, if I have still not gone to the tapovana, it is because I have still one more task to be accomplished. And what's that? It is for the welfare of this Vrishala, that is Chandragupta Maurya. So it is for the sake of this person that I still am here. My role here is not yet over. So he refers to Chandragupta Maurya always as Vrishala. Vrishala stands for a Shudra, a person of lowly origin. We know that Mura, the mother of um, Chandragupta, so was a woman of a low class, and so he is known by the metronymic Maurya, the son of Mura. And Chandragupta has a fair deal of contempt regarding this person, Chandragupta. So, because he lacks the kind of brilliance that Chanakya has, but yet he knows that it is Chandragupta who is the best person in the available lot who can abide by dharma, because he knew that Chanakya was a very great person and therefore he would not um, stray from the path that is chalked out by Chanakya, and Chanakya was all for dharma, and therefore he knew that dharma would be in safe hands. So, in this very act, we see the message sent from Chandragupta to Chanakya, and Chanakya admiring Chandragupta of his independence and his worthy decisions and so on. So, yet he knew that intellectually Chandragupta Maurya was rather inferior, and he would always address him as Vrishala. Whereas Rakshasa himself, Amatya Rakshasa himself, refers to Chanakya as Chanakya Batu, as a young man. So, still, which means to say that Rakshasa was a very senior person. Obviously, he was a chief minister of the Nandas for a very long time, and obviously, that being the case, Chanakya must have appeared like just a Batu for him. So, however, Chanakya has this feeling towards Chandragupta Maurya. So he says, Chanakya says, well, Samutkhata Nandaha Navahradaya Shalyaha Iva Bhuvaha. There were 9 Nandas, and the 9 Nandas were like 9 darts in the heart of the earth, Mother Earth. So Hridaya Shalyaha Iva Bhuvaha. So they were like the 9 darts, and they have all been uprooted. And then Chandragupta has been now been established. So Rajalakshmi has been made well established in the case of Chandragupta. Krita Maurya Lakshmi Sthirapada. Now, all of Arthashastra deals with 2 aspects, namely yoga and kshema. Yoga is attaining what was not attained earlier. So it's called, referred to, described as alabdhya labha, or more accurately, alabdha labha, acquisition of what has not been acquired earlier. And kshema is referred to labdhasya parirakshanam, that is to say, protecting what has been, guarding what has been acquired. In fact, there are 2 more steps in Kautilya's Arthashastra. So it is not merely acquisition of what was not acquired. It is not merely a question of maintenance of what has been thus acquired, but it is a further enhancement of the same. So it is Parivardhana. And then Tirtha Pratipadana, that is distributing the same, the riches and the achievements, so that it reaches the worthy recipients and so on. So these 4 steps constitute the essential content of Kautilya's Arthashastra, and of the 4 are sometimes referred to by just the 2 names, yoga and kshema. And here Chandragupta did not possess the kingdom, and the acquisition of the kingdom is referred to as yoga. And making Rajalakshmi be firmly established there. So Sthirapada Lakshmi, so royal glory being well ensconced there. So making that is second task. So I have done both, Chanakya says. So in the case of a sannyasin, it is said that when he dies, so he distributes his good karma and bad karma that have still not been enjoyed, so among his friends and foes respectively. So even so, here he says, my Kopa and Priti have been shown in regard to these 2 persons. So with regard to the Nandas, so my Kopa has been shown, and with regard to Chandragupta Maurya, my Priti has been shown. So my anger towards the Nandas and love and affection towards Chandragupta Maurya. So this division has been made. And he revises his statement saying that, well, I have uprooted all the Nandas. So it's as though the Nandas had become cankerous to the society. So utterly selfish, always reveling in royal glory and the enjoyments rather than attending to the royal duties. So when a king considers that his kingdom is a matter of enjoyment rather than as a duty for the protection of dharma, so then the ruin of the kingdom begins. And that was the case with the Nandas. And therefore, it is as though every one of them was of that category, and there was hardly any exception. And therefore, Chanakya was very angry with the 9 Nandas, and for him, the most important task now was the capturing of Amatya Rakshasa. So if Amatya Rakshasa is not captured, it is as though the Nandas have not been uprooted at all. Agrihite Rakshase Kimutkhatam Nandavamshasya, and Kim was Thairyam Utpaditam Chandragupta Lakshmiyaha. And therefore, there is no question of saying that Rajalakshmi has been well established. So for the for Chandragupta's regime. So even that cannot be um, very clearly and strongly asserted, because Rakshasa himself was endowed with a certain acumen, and if indeed he becomes powerful, he would definitely overpower Chandragupta and can dethrone him. And he admires Rakshasa's um, bhakti towards Nandavamsha. Aho Rakshasasya Nandavamshe Niratishayo Bhakti Gunaha. So it is this that can be said to be the essential constituent of the play, namely that Rakshasa was endowed with a certain devotion to his master. This quality of loyalty is often not seen in people, and it is because of that very reason that Chanakya had to be worried about Rakshasa, because in case Rakshasa once again becomes powerful, so if his machinations continue unchecked, then one cannot be sure of the continuance of Chandragupta Maurya in the on the throne. And Chanakya was also very sure that even if there is one person that lives on in the Nandavamsha, so then you cannot expect you cannot expect Rakshasa to come and be a devoted minister to Chandragupta, or that Chandragupta would be free from trouble. And therefore, Kusmimshchidapi Jivate Nandanvavai. So, in the Nanda family, even if a single person is there alive, then it's going to be very poisonous for the kingdom of Chandragupta Maurya, and therefore, till then I will not be able to make Rakshasa the minister of Chandragupta, and therefore all my efforts henceforth are directed towards somehow getting Amatya to be the minister of Chandragupta. And he says that there was one person, Sarvartha Siddhi, so who was related to the Nandas. So the uncle of the Nandas, by name Sarvartha Siddhi. So when he saw all these court intrigues, so he was very much disgusted with all this, and he just went away through Suranga Marga to the Tapovana to perform tapas. But Chanakya was sure that the DNA of this family, Nanda family, so is something that is dangerous, so today or in the future, so it can once again raise its ugly head and can be cancerous to the society. And therefore he wanted to ensure that none in the Nanda family remains, so that there will be none to whom Amatya Rakshasa can show his true loyalty. And therefore, this person, Sarvartha Siddhi, who had gone to the Tapovana, even he was got assassinated by Chanakya. Chanakya looks rather ruthless, so in his machinations and in his actions. So that is why many Westerners have tried to compare Chanakya with Machiavelli, who also supported such ways and means of supporting royalty at any cost, and therefore was capable of any kind of crime. And therefore, comparisons have been made, but it's only towards the end of the play that we can see that Chanakya had um, no ambition regarding acquisition of power. So that was not his goal at all. On the other hand, he was very keen on ensuring that the he was very keen on ensuring that
I think you are coming, sir. Actually, there's some problem with the screen. You can continue, sir.
I can continue.
You can continue, sir. You are coming here now. Yes.
And therefore ghatitas tapasvi tapovanagatopi nandavamshiyaha sarvartha siddhi. So we know of a similar cancerous family that ruled us. So it's going to be very problematic, and therefore um, he is on a position for um, Rakshasa, whom he calls Mantri Brihaspati. Mantri Brihaspati is Sadhu. Now, the essential program of Chanakya is described in two verses in the beginning of the play itself. So, in the soliloquy that we have of Chanakya, the towards the end of the prologue, after the closure of the prologue, we see the essential policy of Chanakya. So he says, people serve others in the world it's because they have something to gain from that fellow. So they always go and serve someone who is rich, so who is Aishwarya Anapetam Ishwaram. So Arthataha Sevate Lokaha. So it is for the sake of some purpose to be achieved. And more particularly, the word Artha lends itself to the meaning of riches, and therefore their mind set on riches or their mind set on some goal that they have to accomplish. So people go and serve rich people. And if the fellow becomes impoverished, then they won't follow him. On the other hand, sometimes they would follow him even if he is impoverished, and that is because they have a strong hope that he will get re-established once again. And quite in contrast with this is the case of a person who, with a Nisanga Bhakti, with an utmost devotion, so which has nothing to gain in particular. So such persons who are highly devoted to their master, even when he is utterly impoverished. So such persons are even no more. So bhartuhu pralayepi. So even when he is no more, if a person were to have a real loyalty towards the master that he served earlier, then such a person is indeed extremely rare. So te durlabhaha twadrshaha. So such persons are indeed rare, and they are kritinaha. They are the sukritins or the punyashalins. So they are the fortunate ones, and they are the worthy persons. And then he says, it is for this very reason that I want to collect you and bring you over to my side to make you accept the ministership of Chandragupta Maurya. And he very clearly spells out what are the qualities that are required in the case of a person. So who has to serve a master. He says that there are three factors here. One is prajna, or wisdom, and then another is vikrama or dhairya, and the third one is bhakti or devotion. Now, to which one of these would Chanakya give the highest marks? That is the question that is raised, and things are made very plain. So he says, if a person has a high degree of bhakti, but has no prajna and no vikrama, so no wisdom and no valor, what is the use of such a person who has mere bhakti, mere devotion to the master? He can really accomplish nothing. On the other hand, if a person is endowed with prajna and vikrama, so wisdom and valor and courage, so all these qualities are there, but he has no bhakti, no true devotion and loyalty to the master, then what is the use of such a person? So if there is only bhakti, no use. If there is no bhakti at all, no use. And therefore, one must have prajna, vikrama, and bhakti, all the three combined. And it is only such people who can be worthy servants to a master, and others are merely parasites, kalatra mitare, sampat sucha, pat sucha. And therefore, it's no use having such servants. We are reminded of the words of Bhasa. So in his play, Pratigya Yogandrayana, where he says, Sarvam hi sainyam anuragam rite kalatram. So the same idea is repeated here. So sans true loyalty, anuragam rite. So rite in Sanskrit means without. So without this quality of loyalty, then sarvam hi sainyam kalatram, the entire family becomes a burdensome thing, quite like a parasite. So it's no use. And Chanakya spells out what are the things that he has done to ensure that the safety of Chandragupta is accomplished. So he has taken numerous steps. So I am not sleeping, he says, na shayanena sthiyate, and I am putting forth every effort. Now, Chanakya himself knew how to react to one Maya with another Maya. So there was this strong rumor of Chandragupta sought to be being dislodged. So with the collusion of Rakshasa and malay ketu. Now, on his own hand, Chanakya also has set afloat a rumor. And what is that rumor? That um, Parvataka was destroyed by Rakshasa. So through the prayoga of Viśākhanya, or the poison maid. So a Viśākhanya is a girl who, it is said, has been brought up right from childhood by giving her small doses of poison, and um, uh, any person who would have sex with her would surely be killed. So, or even embrace her would be killed. Now, we find Greek references to this kind of employment of Viśākhanya by Indian kings. So, it is said that, yeah, even regarding Alexander, so Aristotle cautioned Alexander when an Indian king presented 4 girls to Alexander. So, regarding one particular person, it was told that Aristotle cautioned Alexander that she is a Viśākhanya, she is a poison maid, and therefore embracing her would lead you to immediate death. And Alexander avoided her, and so on. So this is a documented issue of a girl being so made as to um, herself being immune to poison, so is able to become very poisonous. So Viśākhanyaya Rakshasena smakam atyantopakaramitram ghaditaha tapasvi parvatakaha iti sancharitaha jagati janapavadaha. So I have set afloat this rumor successfully. And then he says he has also set afloat the rumor, and has confused the son of Parvataka, namely malay ketu, um, secretly by one person by name Bhagurayana, who is none but an assistant of Chanakya. And what is Bhagurayana has told this malay ketu is that it is Chanakya who has got killed Parvataka. So while on the one hand the public has received the rumor is afloat that it was Rakshasa who was responsible for the slaying of Parvataka through Viśākhanya. On the other hand, to Ketu, the son of Parvataka, it has been told by Bhagurayana that it was Chanakya who got him killed. And so saying, Parvataka has been scared away from Pataliputra. So that is another thing that Chanakya has achieved. And Chanakya exudes confidence, saying that even if this malay ketu and Rakshasa were to combine, I still know how to destroy them by my prajna, by my brilliance. But then I don't want this Rakshasa so to be hurt in any manner. And further, and that is exactly because he wants Rakshasa to serve as a minister of Chandragupta, and therefore I don't want the infamy that has come upon Rakshasa to be erased right now. So he would wait for his time, and therefore it is still Chandragupta gets him as the minister, that even this infamy to Rakshasa may continue. So I am not keen on erasing even that either. And then I have now deployed numerous spies. So who are highly skilled in Bahuvidha Desha, Vesha, Bhasha, Chara, Sanchara, Vedinaha. So, who are familiar with the various kingdoms, they know the geography of the various places very well. They know the way people dress. So, in different regions, they know different languages, and they know they can watch the movement of people and so on. So, such spies in various guises. So they're all present there. Nana Vyanjanaha Pranidheyaha. And then I have also ensured that the people who are loyal to Nanda and people who are loyal to Chandragupta are also spotted very clearly. and especially those who are loyal to Nanda. So that has been very well taken care of. And Bhadra Bhatta, who was a champion at war, so along with Chandragupta, so he has been shown as a person disloyal to Chandragupta. So it's all question of creating images. So, and even this is for a particular reason. And then now there is always a possibility of Chandragupta being poisoned. So because Amatya had his roots in the Nanda kingdom, and there were people who were loyal to the Nandas, and therefore I had taken care to see that Chandragupta would not be killed by any kind of poisoning. So we know what happened to Lal Bahadur Shastri. So uh, the persons who are very close to the important person, so one has to be very careful about them, and therefore apramadinaha parikshita bhaktayaha. So apramadi is a person who is always on the alert, and parikshita bhakti is a person whose devotion has been very well put to test and is confirmed that he is highly loyal. So such care has also been taken with regard to those who are near Chandragupta Maurya. And then it's only extremely trustworthy persons who have been placed there in various important positions. And then I have this friend of mine, my classmate by name Indu Sharma. So he is a past master in the Dandaniti as espoused by Shukracharya. So Aushanasyam Dandanityam. And he is also a master in Jyotish Shastra with all its 64 limbs. Chatushashtiyangi Jyotish Shastre. So Jyotish Shastre cha param pravinyopagataha. So he's an expert in that. And he now has put on the garb of a Jain friar, so Kshapanaka. So Kshapanakalinga Dhari. And he has now gone to the Rakshasa and has gotten very close to Rakshasa. Thus, we can see that Chanakya was a person who had planted his spies quite close to some of the most important persons in the opposite camp. And he has now inspired the confidence of Rakshasa very well. And therefore, there is nothing that I have done which can be said to be lacking. And it's only the case that Chandragupta is a bit indifferent sometimes, and a king like Chandragupta is called Sachivayat Siddhi. So a person whose Siddhi or accomplishments or Ayatta means dependent. So as we have, for example, the word Swayatta for autonomy. So Ayatta means dependent. So Sachivayatta Siddhi means a person whose accomplishments are all dependent upon the minister. That is to say, the minister, he has capable ministers who take care of everything, and therefore Chandragupta is such a person. So he's not too very much worried about Chandragupta, though he is a Sachivayata Siddhi. So he thus spells out what are all the plans of action that Chanakya has made. So the plans and the arrangements that he has made to ensure that Chandragupta is safe, and ultimately Rakshasa would come round and be the minister of Chandragupta, and there's still a long way to go. Even as he closes his speech, we have the episode of Niponaka. So there are the episodes of Niponaka, and then of Siddharthaka, and of Chandanadasa. Three more, three episodes in the first act of the play. Obviously, we'll not be able to conclude even the opening act. But now this person, Nipunaka, is an important spy of Chanakya, and he has come under the guise of a person who has a sort of a Yamapata, so which is the picture of Yama, and he is able to, he knows singing, and he goes from house to house, and his eyes are set on people who may be close to the Nandas and elicit information, so important information from them. And he comes singing this verse. So bow down to the feet of Yama, pranamata yamasya charanam. What's the use of other gods? Because even if you are devoted to other gods, it is Yama who can take away the life of even that person. He Marayati sarvalokam. So he destroys the life of others. So, and he says, oh, here is a house. Let me get into this house and show this Yamapata and sing some songs. And the Shishya of Chanakya says, you're not supposed to enter here. He asks whose house it is, and he says it is of our master Ari Chanakya, the most famous person. And then he says, okay, I will show him this Yamapata and teach him some dharma. And the Shishya gets very angry and he says, do you know dharma better than my master? And this Niponaka says, nahi sarvasravam janati. Of course, nobody can say that he knows everything. And there is, of course, something that your master knows. And there are certain things that I know and your master does not know. So, and this is naturally very angry and asks, would you want to steal the title of our master as Sarvajna? And then he says, well, your master doesn't know. So who doesn't like the moon? So kasya chandraha anabhipretaha iti. So obviously the reference is to Chandragupta. So the Shishya cannot understand that he is making a reference to Chandragupta because he has merely said the moon. And he says, what is the point in knowing whether anybody likes the moon or not? And then Nipunaka says, well, it is important to your master. So, and he says, lotuses are beautiful, but then don't be carried away by the beauty of the lotuses. Look into the character. Sometimes there is a dissonance between appearance and reality. The appearance may be very attractive, and the reality may be that the person is characterless, and therefore there are items that go against the moon. And while this conversation is going on, Chandragupta Chanakya very clearly perceives that it is something about Chandragupta that is being spoken of here, and therefore things going against the moon is a reference to people who are not happy with Chandragupta. Chandragupta aparaktan purushan janami is what this fellow is saying. So, and while the Shishya says, hey, you're speaking nonsense, will you please get out? So, and then this chara or the spy Nipunaka says, well, I am speaking sense. If only I get a good audience. And then Chanakya says, he interferes and says, well, come inside. So you will get here a person who will listen to you and who can understand you. And then as soon as he enters, he is able to figure out that it is Nipunaka. And then the first question that he puts it, what are your achievements so far? So give a report. And are people happy with Chandragupta? Api Vrishalam Anuraktaha Prakritayaha. Vrishala refers to Chandragupta. And then he says, Nipunaka says, well, sir, undoubtedly citizens are very much devoted to Chandragupta. However, there are three persons who do not like Chandragupta. And Chanakya says, well, nanu vaktayam swajivitam nasahante iti. So if they don't Chandragupta, then their life is shortly coming to an end. And he asks, do you know their names? And Nipunaka says, without collecting their names, would I come and report it to you? So the three are, number one is Kshapanaka Jivasiddhi. Of course, he's obviously a spy employed by Chanakya himself, and he is giving the impression that he is against Chandragupta. And then the other is Shakatadasa. So the Kayastha, the accountant. So, and then Chanakya says that Shakatadasa is an ordinary person. He is just an accountant, and therefore there's nothing to be seriously worried about him. But Chanakya also says that Nayuktam prakritam api ripum avajnatam. It's not proper to ignore an enemy, even if he is a very ordinary one. And therefore, I have employed Siddharthaka for that purpose, as though he's a friend. And then he refers to the most important person, namely Chandanadasa, so who is a jeweler banker, Manikara Shreshthi. He is as it were the second heart, Dvitiyam Hridayam of Amatya Rakshasa. And Chanakya remarks, so in his aside, so to himself, Nonam Suhrittamaha, and he must be the most worthy friend of Chanakya, of Amatya Rakshasa. This Chandanadasa should be. And he also says that the Rakshasa would not leave his family. So, in the protection, under the protection of a person who is not like his own self, because Niponaka had given the information that the family of Rakshasa is there staying with Chandranadasa. Nahi anatma sadrisheshu Rakshasa kalatram nyasi krishyati. And he also gives one Anguli Mudra. So now Chanakya wanted to ensure that he had identified the persons properly. So how do you know that it is Rakshasa family that is staying there with him? And Nipunaka says, here is the ring, the signet ring that will convince you. So as soon as he receives the ring, which has the insignia of the Rakshasa upon it, Chanakya says, Nanuvaktim Rakshasa eva mama anguli pranayi samvrittaha. So Rakshasa has now become anguli pranayi, that is to say, attached to my fingers. So that is to say, fully under the control. And he gives further details about Chandanadasa. I think as it is time up now, we shall stop here. So in the next talk, we will be able to finish this opening act and perhaps try to get into the second act.
Yeah.
Namaste.
Namaste, sir. Thank you very much, sir. So if anyone is having their questions, please put up in the chat box, or can unmute your mic and you can just ask. So there's a question from Mrs. Nandini. What made Malay Ketu to turn against Chandragupta? Initially, were they not together through an agreement to eradicate the Nandas? Will this aspect come later in the play? Who was really behind the killing of Malay Ketu, Chanakya or Rakshasa?
Yeah. These aspects will be touched upon a little later. So it's good that there is some amount of suspense. So this will be touched upon later.
Yeah. Even that I know about, I mean, to add a few words, even how I know the story of Mudrarakshasa, the way how Malay Ketu will be brought down, or the way even how his father will be killed, and all, it's really very interesting. So it's like a suspense. We can wait for it. Thank you, sir. Thank you, madam, for asking a very good question. Thank you.
I have a question, sir. You said that there were three aspects that were required of a good Amatya. One is Prajna, Vikrama, and therefore
Bhakti.
and then Bhakti. Now, all these three were seen in Rakshasa by Chanakya, or
Yeah, exactly.
all three.
Yes.
So that's a rare
It is
combination.
precisely because Amatya had all the three qualities. In fact, it is said, see, in the Ramayana, Valmiki says that Ravana had all the plus points of Rama, except for one factor, namely, he did not have the sense of dharma. Yet the adharmona balavan, that was the one thing that ruined Ravana ultimately. So here, between the two, Amatya and Chanakya, it is as though it is fate that cooperated with Chanakya the more, and that is how Chanakya, Amatya came to face defeat from Chanakya. So that way, as regards Prajna, the two are more or less equal. So in Vikrama also, Prajna also, and in Bhakti. So no, in all the three, Rakshasa was a good match for Chanakya, and therefore, even though the Rakshasa itself, towards the end of the play, he shows hesitancy, so saying that I cannot fill the place that is being filled by you, so occupied by you. So I'm no equal of yours. So even though Rakshasa would say that, so Chanakya knew very well that he had all the three qualities in good measure, and therefore he considered him as the worthy successor and the worthy minister of Chandragupta.
Thank you very much, sir.
Namaskar.
Okay. One Prabhu has raised a hand. So, Mr. Prabhu, can you please unmute yourself? And
Yeah, sure. Thank you, sir. This is
Mr. Prabhu,
yeah. You can hear. Can
you
hear
are
me?
not audible, Mr. Prabhu.
You can hear now. Can you
If
hear?
not, can you please type in the chat box?
You can send the question. Chant the
Yeah.
questions.
Mr. Prabhu, I kindly request you to please put your question in the chat box. The word Rakshasa has well-known connotation for us today. Okay.
Okay, regarding the word Rakshasa, we discussed this last time also. There is no very easy answer for that question. In my last talk, I referred to people sometimes keeping a name which is highly pejorative and would mean the very opposite of what they are supposed to be. So, and that is to avert some durdrishti or whatever. So, because of some negative experience, people keep such names sometime. I have not come across a better answer for that question.
I think Mr. Prabhu's okay. Thank you, Mr. Prabhu.